Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Expat options. Where do we go from here? Options are changing with many of the restrictions and different regulations. I've been searching through the different travel sites, and I'm going to go over a lot of travel information here today. Anyway, first of all, on the raw, bare naked news, a little bit on the light side, there was a nudist colony somewhere that was required to wear face masks. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, on the flight side, I understand that one of the major airlines, United or American, permanently, they said permanently dropped their $200 change fee if you want to change your flight. They were charging $200, and other major airlines followed with that. Apparently, that is a big part of their profit each and every year, up to like 10 million or $6 million a year in profit, something like that. Um, anyway, so that is a good option. I understand that in the coming months, the airfare should be the lowest that you're going to see in a long time. I checked some flights going from the Philippines to Phoenix, and I found a flight for less than $600 one way. A friend sent me this video from the Manila Terminal 1 airport. He flew back to Toronto, I believe, Canada, and that kind of sums up the situation with airlines, airports in most parts of the world. Business travel is way down. Leisure travel is way down. Either people don't have the money, they're afraid to travel, the restrictions are far too tight to make it a leisure, fun trip. And in the U.S., there are a number of countries that are bailing out their airlines. I think Thai Air is in bankruptcy now. The CARE Act in the United States is basically said that the airlines, it supported them keeping the people on the payroll through September, I believe. But at the end of September, that act expires unless it is extended, in which case they've already went out and they've made notices that they're going to furlough tens of thousands of workers from airlines. They're going to start shutting down flights between different cities, so there will be a lot less to choose from. I hope and suspect that they will renew that package to keep it going at least in through, they're talking March, because in the summer season is usually the better season for, that's when they start making their money, I guess the airlines do. So most bankruptcies happen in the winter spring seasons, and they really need to support the airlines to keep that industry going. I will be buying a one-way ticket to the U.S. from the Philippines sometime before March 2021. One way, because I don't know if the country's going to be back open up then. Even though if I buy a round-trip ticket at some point in time, they will give free changes if they cancel the flights. Because the countries are no longer open, or whatever reason. But I will get a one-way ticket, and then I'll be free to find a ticket to wherever I want to go after that, whatever countries are open. Now, the bad news is that all these countries, many of the countries, continue to move back the opening time. And I had been optimistic for 1, 2, and then even 3 months that they would see the economic devastation. They would see that the harm caused by the lockdown, physically, the deaths, the economic, the mental damage that they're doing to the population of the world is much greater than the number of deaths that are happening from the virus. I think that's obvious from a lot of the information that's finally starting to come out. Anyway, planes parked all over the world. Those planes, you can't just let them sit. They need to be maintained. So it costs even just to maintain them. Uh, they need to start flying again. And even though the Thailands, the Philippines, and I'll get into more of the details of the Philippines here very shortly, there's some new information out that's not the best to hear. But anyway, my feeling is still that in the coming months, as more and more data comes out, um, that I suspect and I hope that the powers that be will start being more aggressive in opening up the economies, because the devastation is just it is just so huge, so bad, affecting so many people. There are several countries, including the Philippines and Thailand, who are really hoping that domestic tourism by their local citizens will help kickstart the tourism industry. The tourism industry, I think, in the Philippines is about 8 to 10% of GDP, I think. Anyway, Korea, China. If you take what the countries that are considered Western countries, USA, Australia, Europe, Canada, United Kingdom, lump them all together, really the Western countries are the largest group if you take and add all those up. And that's not including the expats, the ones who have different permanent visas here as well, who are spending millions of dollars here each and every year. So I think it's wrong for them to try to depend. Number one, I don't think the people have the money. Number two, I think they're afraid to travel. They've been scared to death that they're going to die if they travel. Cebu hotels and resorts slashed their room rates. Uh, the, they've gone from 10% occupancy down to 0% occupancy. They're starting to open back up here in September 2020. But the problem is the travel restrictions. Basically, you're not allowed to travel without a quarantine pass, and they are very limited. Some of the resorts are starting to open up, but only for local tourism. So even Oslo, the whale watching down south of Cebu, uh, where they would normally get, I think, over 1,000 people per day, they're lucky to get a dozen people, 10, 12, 15 people a day. And I suspect as that first group of tourists kind of have gone there, that there will be fewer and fewer as the weeks go by, I suspect. So here in the Philippines, domestic tourism indeed in the past has been a big part of the tourism industry. They've got over 100 million people here, and they often go out to the tourist spots that the Filipinos like to visit and enjoy. But there are millions and millions of other people who are employed by resorts, hotels, the taxis, the transportation, that cater much more to the foreigners, to the Westerners, to the Chinese, to the Koreans, to the Japanese. And those people will remain out of work and in very dire economic straits. And this came from the Philippine Tourist Department, and I was listening to a discussion, interviews with a number of ASEAN, ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, I believe, and all their tourist departments, and none of them had any optimistic views in the future. Many talking about 2022, 2023 before things would get really back to the same level of tourism from 2019. But this was one of the things I grabbed off of that site, what their priorities are. And I'm going to get to more specific information about the Philippines. And here is one of a number of articles that I've read. La Prensa Latina, thanks for sending this one to me as well. and says Philippines will not open to international tourism till the second half of 2021. July onwards, I guess that means, subject to change. The Philippines will not open its borders to international visitors till the second half of 2021 and plans to gradually reactivate domestic tourism in October. And this is September now. According to a spokesman for the Department of Tourism, when other countries will lift border controls, of course that is a key, the Department of Tourism expects international visitors from the region in the second half of 2021, which means sometime after July of 2021, the regional, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, other people from Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, I presume, if they don't have high degrees of this virus. Rather than fully opening up to foreign visitors, we will create travel bubbles with countries in the region that have been successful in containing the virus. And they're already just starting to plan that here in September 2020 with certain areas, up in Baguio, for instance, up in the northern area of Luzon Island province, and to have just kind of the more of the locals start to visit the tourist site. They're doing that in Boracay area, in Bohol and parts of Cebu, because you still are restricted in your travel and needing quarantine passes, all those types of things. You're not allowed to travel for leisure for all practical purposes. That puts a big damper on anybody traveling for leisure anyway. The Philippines has imposed one of the longest, strictest quarantines in the world, and it has particularly affected tourism, transport, aviation sectors, as not only the country's borders are closed, but movement between provinces is also very restricted. To offset the losses, 11% of GDP, they plan on a gradual reopening of domestic tourism in the last quarter of the year. So the last 3 months of 2020, they will start allowing Filipinos to travel a bit more. For now, the authorities contemplate activating tourist corridors in regions in strict compliance with safety health protocols. Last week it was announced that Baguio, up north, there again 250 kilometers north of Manila, it's high, it's about 5,000 feet in the air. It's considered the summer capital because it's so much cooler up there, and will be open to visitors from neighboring provinces who will be able to enjoy the cool temperature, green landscapes at the inner city. Many Filipinos have second homes up there apparently. The islands of Boracay, the main tourist destination in the country, I think is listed as #1 island in the world to visit, I think, by some travel magazines, has only partially opened, but only to travelers from other neighboring islands in the Visayas regions. Something that El Nido on the island of Palawan also hopes to do starting September 15th. Currently, these popular destinations will not be open to inhabitants of Manila and its surroundings, the main epicenter of the virus, with more than half the country's cases, where a quarter of the Philippine population lives. And from the same site here in September 2020, Europe to begin reopening next week as coronavirus pandemic declines. Now, a couple things to be aware of. Many of you have gone through this already, is that many countries are starting to require medical insurance. Even Philippines is requiring Filipinos who want to leave as tourists to other countries to have some type of insurance to cover them in case there are issues, travel insurance, medical insurance. And one of the problems is that all these requirements can change on a weekly basis, so it's difficult to keep up with all the details. I know that I think Cambodia is requiring like $3,000 deposited with them to cover any hospitalization type issues. I believe that even though Thailand still is not allowing foreigners to come in, when they do, they will be required to carry health insurance if they come in. For instance, if you're married to a Philippine, to a Thai, I suspect that the Philippines will be doing the same thing once they start opening up sometime next year, requiring a certain amount of medical insurance. Now, medical tourism is one of the exceptions that some countries, I know that Thailand is allowing medical tourism travel in. I have a friend here in the Philippines, for instance, that, and I think, I'm not positive, that medical tourism is allowed here as well. And I know that for probably 9 months, he has a dentist who has been working on a number of issues, in fact, including implants. So medical tourism may be a way to get into to travel to one of the various countries. So there are, if you're if you have some business in a country, they are also allowing businessmen who are on business travel. Maybe you're an investor. You want to invest in a business. You want to buy a condominium, some properties, that type of thing. That may qualify you. And the thing to do is to go to the Philippine embassy in the country that you're located in and inquire about the requirements to get a visa like that. So I have searched very hard over the last week, especially for good news about travel across the world, especially in Southeast Asia. I think that Vietnam will be one of the countries that will probably open up the soonest. Maybe Thailand after that, Cambodia, Laos, who knows, Myanmar, who knows. There will be options. If a person makes a choice, goes to Vietnam, for instance, for a few months, then he may be able to transfer here quicker than if you're coming from different parts of Europe or the United States, that type of thing. Anyway, beautiful place to be. Good place to be stuck here, but I may be stuck back in the USA for some time after I leave as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. Safe travel. Stay healthy. See ya.